Those were the first words my brother said after ignoring me for almost 7 years. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at him through the open doorway, wondering how he could say those words after everything my family had done to me. 4 years, they never called unless they needed something. They stopped inviting me to holidays. They stopped asking about my life. Eventually, I stopped trying to be part of theirs. So when my brother suddenly appeared at my house that night, I expected an apology. Instead, he handed me an envelope and said, "You have to come with us." I looked at the envelope. Then I saw the name written on the front. And suddenly, I realized this wasn't about money. It was about something my family had been hiding from me for years. But before I tell you what was inside that envelope, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? If you've ever been hurt by someone you loved, let me know. And if you enjoy emotional family stories with twists you won't see coming, please like this video and subscribe. Now let me take you back to those words had been waiting for me for 7 years. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 38 years old, divorced, and living alone in a small 2-bedroom house outside Columbus, Ohio. I worked as a freelance interior designer, which sounded more glamorous than it was. Most months, I spent my days measuring rooms, choosing paint colors, answering clients' texts, and trying to make a living while pretending I wasn't lonely. I had gotten very good at pretending. 7 years earlier, I had stopped expecting my family to call. That decision had not happened in one dramatic moment. It had happened slowly, through birthdays without invitations, Thanksgiving dinners I learned about from Facebook pictures, Christmas gifts that stopped arriving, and phone calls that became shorter until they disappeared completely. He was confident, successful, married, and good at making our parents proud. He owned a small construction company and seemed to know exactly what to say whenever Dad was angry or Mom was worried. I was the difficult one. At least, that was what they called me. I had moved away at 23. I married young, divorced at 31, and rebuilt my life from almost nothing. My family never understood why I didn't come home more often. The truth was simple. Every time I went home, I left feeling smaller. My mother would compare my life to Daniel's. My father would ask when I was going to get a real job. At family dinners, I learned to smile while listening to conversations that stopped whenever I entered the room. Then came the night everything broke. It was my mother's birthday. I had driven nearly 4 hours to surprise her. When I arrived, I saw cars filling the driveway. I knocked. Daniel opened the door. He stared at me for several seconds. Then he said, "Claire, what are you doing here?" I remember laughing because I honestly thought he was joking. "It's Mom's birthday." He looked over his shoulder. Mom was standing behind him. She didn't smile. "Oh," she said quietly. "I thought you weren't coming." That sentence still hurts because she sounded disappointed that I had come. I stayed for less than 20 minutes. That night, I drove home through heavy rain and cried so hard I had to pull onto the shoulder twice. The next morning, I deleted the family group chat. Nobody asked why. That was the part that hurt most. For the next 7 years, I built a life without them. I bought my house. I started taking better clients. I learned how to repair small things myself. I planted tomatoes in the backyard. I adopted a golden retriever named Maggie, who greeted me every morning like I was the most important person in the world. I stopped checking my phone on holidays. I stopped wondering whether my mother would remember my birthday. Eventually, I stopped being angry. I thought that meant I had healed. Then, on a cold Thursday night in November, someone knocked on my front door. I was sitting on the couch with Maggie asleep beside me. A documentary played quietly on television. I almost ignored the knock. Then it came again. 3 slow knocks. I frowned. Nobody visited me without calling first. I walked toward the door and looked through the glass. A man stood on my porch. For a moment, I didn't recognize him. Then my stomach dropped. Daniel. He looked older. Tired. His jacket was soaked from the rain. I opened the door but didn't step aside. "Daniel." He stared at me. "Claire." Neither of us spoke. 7 years disappeared in that silence. I expected him to apologize. I expected him to say he was sorry for Mom, sorry for Dad, sorry for all the holidays, all the birthdays, all the years. Instead, he looked directly into my eyes and said, "We need you." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I couldn't believe the first words my brother had spoken to me in 7 years were not "I'm sorry." I folded my arms. "For what?" He glanced toward the street. Can I come inside? No. His face tightened. Claire, please. You haven't called me in 7 years. I know. You didn't come to my wedding. I know. You didn't even call when Dad died. Daniel looked down. I know. My voice shook. So why are you here? He swallowed. Because we're in trouble. There it was. The reason. Not because he missed me. Not because Mom suddenly realized she had a daughter. Not because Daniel regretted abandoning his little sister. They needed something. I should have closed the door. Instead, I asked, what kind of trouble? He reached inside his jacket. I stepped back instinctively, but he wasn't holding a phone or a wallet. He pulled out a large, cream-colored envelope. There was a red seal across the back. My name was written on the front. Not Claire. Not Claire Bennett. It said, Claire Eleanor Bennett. My full name. The name my father used only on legal documents. I stared at it. What's that? Daniel held it out. Dad left it for you. My heart stopped. My dad. He told Mom never to give it to you unless. He stopped. Unless what? Daniel looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Fear. Unless the family had no other choice. I didn't take the envelope. What's inside? I don't know. You expect me to believe that? I swear. Rain tapped against the porch roof. Maggie appeared behind me, staring at Daniel. I looked down at the envelope again. For 7 years, my family had acted as if I didn't exist. And now my dead father had apparently left something with my name on it. Something important enough to bring Daniel to my doorstep in the middle of the night. I should have felt curious. Instead, I felt something colder. Suspicion. Because my father had been dead for 4 years. If this envelope was truly meant for me, why had it taken them 4 years to bring it? And why now? I finally reached for it. The moment my fingers touched the paper, Daniel said quietly, Whatever you do, Claire, don't tell Mom you have it. I didn't sleep that night. The envelope sat on my kitchen table for nearly 3 hours before I finally opened it. Maggie, my golden retriever, lay beneath the table watching me. There was no return address. No date. Only my full name. Claire Eleanor Bennett. On the back, beneath the red seal, were 3 handwritten words. For Claire only. I opened it. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. My hand started shaking the moment I saw my father's handwriting. I hadn't seen it since the week before he died. The letter began, Claire, if you're reading this, something has happened that I hoped would never happen. You have always believed that I was disappointed in you. You were wrong. I stopped reading. For 7 years, I had believed I was the daughter who disappointed him. Daniel was successful. He had taken over Dad's construction company. I was the daughter who moved away, divorced, and built a life nobody in my family seemed proud of. But Dad's next words made my stomach tighten. There are things your mother and Daniel don't know. There are things they were never supposed to know. If they come to you asking for help, do not give them money. Do not sign anything. And most importantly, do not trust anyone who tells you that I wanted the family business to stay with Daniel. I read that sentence twice. The family business. As far as I knew, Dad had left everything connected to the company to Daniel. Then I reached the final lines. There is a reason you were kept away. When the time comes, ask for the blue file. That was all. No explanation. No signature. Just a blue file. I sat there in silence. Maybe Dad had been confused near the end. Maybe the illness had affected his judgment. But one thing bothered me. The warning about money and signatures was far too specific. My father had known something was coming. The next morning, Daniel called. I almost ignored him. Claire. His voice sounded exhausted. Did you open it? Yes. What did he say? I didn't answer. Instead, I asked, why did you wait 7 years? There was silence. Mom told me not to give it to you. My chest tightened. What does Mom know? I don't know everything. Then tell me what you do know. I can't explain it over the phone. Why? He lowered his voice. Because Mom is listening. I stood up. What is going on? Just come home. No. Claire, please. You haven't called me in 7 years. You didn't come when Dad died. So why are you suddenly asking me to come home? He was silent. Then he said, Don't contact a lawyer. The call ended. I stared at my phone. That was when I realized this wasn't simply a family argument. Something was wrong. That afternoon, I drove to my mother's house. I hadn't been inside since Dad's funeral. Mom opened the door before I knocked. She looked at me, then at my car. "Why are you here?" "Daniel called me." Her expression changed. "What did he tell you?" "That he was worried. He worries too much." "He gave me something." Mom's face went pale. She knew. I stepped inside. Dad left me a letter. She closed the door behind me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Your father was sick. He knew what he was writing. You don't understand what was happening near the end." "Then explain it." She walked into the kitchen. I followed. "Claire, some things are better left alone." I stared at her. "You had 7 years to tell me." Her eyes hardened. "You weren't ready." "For what?" She didn't answer. I pulled the letter from my purse. "Why did Dad say you weren't supposed to give this to me?" Mom looked away. "He was angry." "At you." Silence. "At Daniel." Nothing. "Then who?" She finally looked at me. "You." The answer stunned me. "Me." "He blamed himself for what happened to you." "What happened to me?" Mom turned toward the sink. "You always wanted to know why your father treated Daniel differently." "Yes." "He didn't. Everyone knew he favored Daniel. That wasn't favoritism." "Then what was it?" She turned to me. "Protection." The word made my stomach drop. Protection from what? Before she could answer, someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Mom froze. Then the knock came again. I looked at her. "Who is that?" She grabbed my wrist. "Claire, you need to leave." "Why?" "Now." The door handle moved. Someone was trying to open it. Then a man's voice came from outside. "Mrs. Bennett? We need to talk." Mom's face went pale. I whispered, "Who is that?" She looked toward the hallway. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "He knows about the file." "What file?" Mom's eyes filled with tears. "The blue one." The front door opened. And suddenly, the secret my father had spent years hiding wasn't just a secret anymore. Someone else knew it existed, and they had come looking for it. The front door opened slowly. A man in a dark coat stood on the porch. He was probably in his late 50s, with silver hair and a calm expression that somehow made me more nervous than anger would have. He looked at my mother. Then he looked at me. His eyes stopped on the letter in my hand. "Claire Bennett." I didn't answer. Mom stepped between us. "You shouldn't be here." The man gave a small smile. "I think we both know why I'm here." "Leave." "Linda, this has gone on long enough." My mother's face tightened. I looked at her. "Who is he?" She didn't answer. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. He held it toward me. "Martin Hayes, attorney at law." I took it. He watched my reaction carefully. "Your father hired me several years ago." My heart skipped. "Before he died?" "Yes." "Why?" Martin looked at my mother. "That's something you should ask her." Mom shook her head. "No." I turned toward her. "Mom, I'm done being kept in the dark. You don't understand what you're asking." "Then help me understand." Martin stepped inside. Mom didn't stop him. That frightened me more than anything. We sat in the living room where my father had spent countless evenings watching baseball. Martin placed a thin folder on the coffee table. "Not blue. Black." He looked at me. "Your father instructed me to contact you only if certain conditions were met." "What conditions?" "Your family experiencing financial distress." I glanced toward Mom. She looked away. "And your brother requesting your assistance." I felt a chill. "That's exactly what happened." Martin nodded. "Then your father was right." I stared at him. "Right about what?" He opened the folder. Inside were copies of documents, bank statements, and legal papers. I didn't understand most of them, but one phrase appeared repeatedly. "Bennett Holdings." I looked at Martin. "What is Bennett Holdings?" He leaned back. "Your father's private investment company." I blinked. "My father owned an investment company?" "Yes." I looked at Mom. She remained silent. "How much?" Martin hesitated. "That's complicated. Try me." He slid one document across the table. I looked at the number. My mouth went dry. It wasn't millions. It was much less. For a second, I almost felt relieved. Then Martin said, "That's the value of the company at the time your father died." I looked at him. "And today?" He didn't answer immediately. That silence was enough. "Martin," he finally said, "approximately $38 million." I couldn't breathe. Mom whispered, "Claire." I stood up. "No." I shook my head. "No, that's impossible." My father had owned a construction company. That's what everyone knew. He had never talked about investments. He drove an old pickup truck. He wore the same watch for 20 years. He complained about grocery prices. $38 million didn't fit the man I knew. Or thought I knew. Martin spoke quietly. "Your father deliberately kept his private assets separate from the construction company." "Why?" "Because he believed someone close to him was trying to take control." I looked at Mom. She closed her eyes. "Who?" Martin didn't answer. I already knew the name that came to mind. "Daniel." Mom suddenly stood. "Don't blame your brother." I turned toward her. "Then why did Dad specifically say not to trust anyone who told me the business was supposed to stay with Daniel?" She said nothing. Martin looked uncomfortable. Then he reached into his briefcase. He pulled out a second envelope. This one was blue. My heart stopped. "The blue file," I whispered. Martin nodded. "Your father instructed me to keep this until you personally asked for it." I reached for it. Mom grabbed my arm. "Claire, don't." I pulled away. "You've been hiding this from me for 4 years. I was protecting you." "From what?" She looked at Martin. Then at me. "From your brother." The room went silent. I opened the blue folder. The first document was a copy of my father's will. I scanned the first page, then the second. Then I stopped. My name appeared near the bottom. "Sole beneficiary of Bennett Holdings." I stared at the words. "I'm the beneficiary?" Martin nodded. "Your father left the investment company to you." My hands began trembling. "But Daniel runs the construction company." "He does. So what does he get?" Martin looked at me. "Very little." I couldn't understand. "Then why did Dad let him run everything?" "Because your father wanted him to believe he had control." I stared at him. That made no sense. Martin continued. "Your father believed Daniel was being influenced by someone else. He wanted to know how far they would go." "Who?" Before Martin could answer, the front door opened. Daniel walked into the house. He stopped when he saw Martin. Then he saw the blue folder in my hands. His face changed. Not surprise. Not confusion. Fear. "Claire." I stood. "You knew." Daniel looked at Mom. "Mom." She said nothing. He looked back at me. "You weren't supposed to find that yet." My heart sank. What exactly wasn't I supposed to find? Daniel took a step toward me. "Listen to me." "No." "Claire, please." "You came to my house asking for help." He swallowed. "And you knew Dad left everything to me." "I didn't know everything." "That's not what you said." He looked toward Martin. Then back at me. "Dad was trying to protect you." "From you." "No." His voice cracked. "From someone who has been controlling this family for years." I stared at him. "Who?" Daniel looked at our mother. Mom began crying. Daniel whispered, "Her." I froze. He pointed at our mother. For 7 years, I had believed my mother simply didn't care about me. Now my brother was telling me she had been hiding something enormous. But before I could ask another question, Martin placed the final document on the table. Nobody moved. I looked at the blue folder. "What is it?" Martin didn't answer. Daniel stepped forward. "Claire, you don't need to see that." I looked at him. That's exactly what everyone has been saying to me for 7 years. His face fell. I reached for the document. Martin didn't stop me. The paper was a copy of a bank authorization. At the top was my father's name. Below it was a second name, Linda Bennett, my mother's name. I looked at her. "What is this?" She sat down slowly. "It was a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" She covered her face with both hands. Martin spoke quietly. "Your mother transferred funds from one of your father's accounts shortly before his death." My stomach tightened. "How much?" Martin gave me the number. $2 million. I stared at him. $2 million. My mother had taken $2 million. Where did it go? She didn't answer. I looked at Daniel. "You know." He shook his head. "I know some of it." "Then tell me." He looked at Mom. She whispered, Daniel, don't. I stood. Enough. My voice shook. I spent 7 years thinking you all hated me. Nobody spoke. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought Dad was ashamed of me. I thought Daniel was the son everyone wanted. I looked at my mother. And all this time, you were hiding millions of dollars and a company from me? Mom began crying. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? She looked toward the window. Your father was afraid? Of who? She didn't answer. Martin did. Your father believed someone was manipulating your brother. Daniel closed his eyes. I turned toward him. Who? He finally said. Richard. I frowned. Who is Richard? Daniel looked at Mom. My business partner. I had heard the name before. Richard Cole. Daniel's closest friend. The man who had supposedly helped him expand the construction company after Dad retired. What does he have to do with this? Daniel sat down. Everything. He rubbed his face. After Dad became sick, Richard started handling more of the company finances. At first, I trusted him. And then, he started moving money. Where? I don't know. Martin interrupted. We know where some of it went. He opened another file. Several company accounts appeared on the pages. Payments had been made to shell companies. Some were registered in Delaware, others in Nevada. My eyes moved across the documents. This is fraud. Martin nodded. Potentially. I looked at Daniel. Why didn't you report him? Daniel laughed bitterly. Because by the time I realized what he was doing, he had already made it look like I was involved. I stared at him. You were. No. His answer came immediately. Then he lowered his voice. But nobody would have believed me. I remembered Dad's letter. Do not trust anyone who tells you that I wanted the family business to stay with Daniel. Suddenly, something clicked. Dad hadn't been warning me about Daniel. He had been warning me about the people surrounding him. I looked at Martin. Then why did Dad leave everything to me? Martin folded his hands. Because your father believed Richard would eventually try to take control of the company. And me. You were outside the business. So I was safe. Exactly. I sat down. For the first time, the pieces began connecting. The family dinners. The distance. My mother's coldness. Daniel avoiding me. Dad's silence. Maybe none of it had been random. Maybe they had pushed me away because someone was watching. But there was still one question. I looked at my mother. Why did you take the $2 million? She started crying again. Daniel looked at the floor. Mom finally whispered. Because Richard threatened us. My entire body went still. What did he threaten? She shook her head. I can't. Mom. I can't. After everything you've hidden from me, you owe me the truth. She looked at me. Then she said, he threatened to expose what happened to your father. The room went silent. I felt the air leave my lungs. What happened to Dad? Mom's eyes filled with tears. He didn't die from natural causes. Daniel stood abruptly. Mom. She covered her mouth. Martin's expression changed. I looked from one person to another. What did you just say? Mom was trembling. Your father knew Richard was stealing from the company. I waited. He confronted him. And... Mom looked at me. The night before your father went to the hospital, he received a phone call. From Richard? She nodded. He went to meet him. My heart was pounding. What happened? We don't know. Then how did Dad die? He collapsed. I stared at her. You said he was sick. He was. But that wasn't the whole truth. Mom shook her head. No. I stood. So Dad's death wasn't natural. Martin interrupted. Claire, we don't have enough evidence to say that. But you believe it. He didn't answer. I looked at Daniel. You knew. I suspected. For 4 years. I was trying to protect you. I almost laughed. Everyone keeps saying that. Then I noticed something. Daniel wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the blue folder. Specifically, at the bottom corner. I followed his gaze. There was a small handwritten note. I pulled the folder closer. It said, one person in this room is lying. My heart stopped. I looked at Mom. Then Daniel. Then Martin. Someone was lying. But who? And why would my father... For several seconds, I couldn't move. The phone was still in my hand. Daniel stared at me. What did he say? I looked at him. He asked me to ask you what happened the night Dad died. Daniel's face changed. Not surprise. Fear. Mom immediately stood. Claire, you need to leave. I turned toward her. No. Please. No more secrets. Martin closed the blue folder. We should continue this somewhere safer. I looked at him. Why? Because if Richard knows about the file, this house isn't safe. The name made my stomach tighten. Richard. The man I had never met. The man who apparently knew about my father's hidden assets. The man who had just called my phone. I looked at Daniel. What happened that night? He didn't answer. Daniel. He finally sat down. Dad called me that evening. What did he say? He told me he had discovered something about Richard. What? I don't know. You don't know. Daniel rubbed his forehead. He said he had proof that money was being moved out of the company. Then what? He told me not to come home. I frowned. Why? He said someone was following him. I felt a chill. So what did you do? I ignored him. His voice cracked. I thought he was being paranoid. And then, he called again around midnight. Daniel looked at Mom. He sounded terrified. What did he say? He said, if anything happens to me, protect Claire. I froze. My name. Again. What happened next? Daniel swallowed. He never came home. I stared at him. Where was he found? His truck was parked outside a restaurant. What restaurant? Somewhere downtown. Was Richard there? I don't know. I looked at Martin. Did the police investigate? Yes. And your father's death was ruled natural. I shook my head. That isn't what you believe. No. Why? Martin opened the folder again. Because there was one detail missing from the official report. What detail? He slid a photograph across the table. It showed my father's truck. The passenger side window was shattered. I stared at it. Why wasn't this in the report? It was. Then why did you say it was missing? Because the report claimed the window was broken after your father's death. I looked at him. How? They said it happened during towing. I laughed bitterly. That makes no sense. No. Martin reached for another document. There was also a second set of fingerprints inside the truck. Whose? Unknown. I felt my hands go cold. Did you ever find out? Martin shook his head. No. Then Daniel spoke. I did. I turned toward him. What? I found out whose fingerprints they were. The room went silent. Whose? Daniel looked at me. Richard's. Mom covered her mouth. I stood so quickly that the chair moved backward. You knew this. Daniel nodded. For 4 years. And you said nothing? I was trying to get proof. Proof of what? That Richard was responsible. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You let me think Dad died naturally. I was scared. You let me believe Dad didn't trust me. Daniel looked down. I know. You let me spend 7 years thinking our family wanted nothing to do with me. His eyes filled with tears. I know. I turned away. For the first time, I saw my brother differently. He wasn't the confident son who had everything. He looked exhausted, broken, like a man who had been carrying something far too heavy for far too long. Then Martin said something that changed everything again. There's still one problem. I looked at him. What? Richard isn't the only person whose fingerprints were found. My heart stopped. Who else? Martin looked toward my mother. Mom slowly shook her head. No. I stared at her. Mom! She started crying. I never touched your father's truck. Martin spoke softly. The second fingerprints belonged to someone in this room. Nobody moved. I looked at Daniel. He looked at me. Then I looked at Martin. Finally, I looked at my mother. One of them was lying. Or perhaps all of us had been lied to. My phone suddenly buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. There was only one sentence. Stop looking for the blue file. Then another message arrived. This one contained a photograph. I opened it. It was a picture of me, standing outside my house the previous night. Someone had been watching me. I looked toward the living room window. Across the street, a black SUV was parked. Its engine was running. That's them, Daniel whispered. Who? Richard. He grabbed his jacket. We have to go. I didn't move. Where? Somewhere he can't find us. I looked at the blue folder. Then at my mother. I'm not leaving until I know who was inside Dad's truck. Martin stood. Claire, listen to me. Your father prepared for this possibility. What does that mean? He reached into his briefcase and removed a small key. It was old and brass-colored. My father's initials were engraved on it. E.B. What is that? Your father told me to give you this only after you discovered the fingerprints. I stared at the key. What does it open? Martin looked at me. A safety deposit box. Where? He hesitated. Your father's old bank. I felt a strange sense of dread. What is inside? Martin's answer was quiet. Evidence. Before I could say anything else, the black SUV across the street suddenly pulled away. Daniel looked through the window. They know we're leaving. I closed my hand around the key. For 7 years, I had believed my family had abandoned me. Now I was beginning to understand something much worse. Maybe they hadn't abandoned me. Maybe they had been keeping me away because someone had been waiting for me to come back. And whatever my father had hidden inside that safety deposit box could finally reveal why. We left my mother's house through the back door. Martin drove. Daniel sat beside him, while I sat in the back, gripping my father's key. Nobody spoke. I kept thinking about the blue file, about the warning, about the person who had been watching me. The bank was an old stone building downtown. Martin had already arranged everything, so we were taken into a private room. A manager placed a metal safety deposit box on the table. Number 214. My father's name was on the paperwork. I inserted the key. The lock clicked. Inside were several documents, a black notebook, an old photograph, and a small flash drive. I picked up the photograph first. It showed my father standing beside a younger man. Daniel immediately recognized him. That's Richard. I turned the photograph over. 5 handwritten words were written on the back. The first mistake was trusting him. My stomach tightened. I opened the black notebook. There were dates, account numbers, and notes written in my father's handwriting. Then I saw a name. Daniel Bennett. I looked at my brother. Why is your name in here? I don't know. I turned the page. A sentence stopped me. Daniel doesn't know. Daniel stared at it. Then he whispered. Dad knew. Knew what? That Richard was using me. I continued reading. Several pages contained records of money being transferred between accounts connected to Richard. Then I saw another name. Linda Bennett. My mother. I looked at Daniel. Why is Mom here? He shook his head. I don't know. I turned to Martin. What about the flash drive? Your father told me it contained the most important evidence. Can we open it? Not here. Why? If Richard has access to the company's systems, he could track it. Suddenly, Daniel looked toward the door. What? Someone's outside. We froze. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Then the door handle moved. The bank manager opened it. Nobody was there. He looked confused. Everything all right? Martin nodded. Yes. The manager left. Daniel remained tense. We packed everything and left. Outside, the parking garage was almost empty. I was about to enter Martin's car when a man's voice stopped me. Claire. I turned. A man stood beside a concrete pillar. Richard. He looked completely ordinary. Gray suit, expensive watch, calm expression. Nothing about him suggested danger. But Daniel immediately stepped in front of me. Stay away from her. Richard smiled. You've been busy. Daniel glared at him. You killed him. Richard's smile disappeared. Be careful what you accuse people of. I looked at him. How did you know my father? Your father talked about you constantly. I didn't respond. He was very proud of you, Richard continued. Then his eyes dropped toward my hand. The flash drive. His expression changed. Give me that. I tightened my grip. No. Richard's voice became colder. Claire, you have no idea what your father left behind. What reality? That he was losing control. And you were there when he died? Richard stared at me. Your father died because of his own choices. Then he walked away. I watched him disappear. Daniel whispered, he knows. I looked at the flash drive. He knows we found it. Martin nodded. And now he knows you have it. We returned to my house. As soon as I reached the front door, I knew something was wrong. It was slightly open. I was certain I'd locked it. Daniel entered first. The house looked untouched. My laptop was still there. My jewelry was still there. Nothing valuable had been taken. Then I saw the kitchen table. The envelope from my father was gone. My heart dropped. Someone had entered my house, and they had taken only one thing. The letter. Then I noticed a small piece of blue paper on the table. 5 words were written on it. Ask your mother about Daniel. I stared at the message. Before I could say anything, my phone rang. Mom. I answered. Her voice was barely a whisper. Claire. What happened? Daniel is not who you think he is. I looked at my brother. He was standing across the room, watching me. My mother's voice trembled. Whatever he tells you. She paused. Don't believe him. The call ended. I slowly lowered my phone. Daniel stared at me. What did she say? I didn't answer. For 7 years, I had believed my family simply didn't want me. Now I understood something far more frightening. They had all been protecting secrets, and one of those secrets was about my brother. I didn't answer Daniel. I simply stared at him. What did she say? He asked again. I folded the blue note and put it in my pocket. She said she was scared. Daniel's face tightened. Of what? You tell me. He looked away. That was enough. Daniel, what happened? I told you everything. No. You told me what you wanted me to know. He stepped closer. Claire, I'm trying to protect you. I laughed bitterly. Everyone keeps saying that. He lowered his voice. Because it's true. Then tell me why Mom thinks I shouldn't trust you. Daniel looked toward the window. She has her reasons. What reasons? He didn't answer. I picked up my phone. I'm calling her back. No. His reaction was immediate. I stared at him. Why not? Because she's lying to you. How do you know? Because she has been lying to everyone. I felt my stomach tighten. About the $2 million? He nodded. About Dad's death? Another nod. Then tell me what she did. Daniel sat down. For the first time, he looked defeated. Mom didn't steal that money. I frowned. Martin said the records showed she transferred it. She did. Then what's the difference? The money was transferred because Dad told her to. I stared at him. Why? To pay someone. Who? Daniel looked at the floor. Richard. I felt a chill. Why would Dad pay Richard? He wasn't paying him. Daniel looked up. He was paying him to disappear. I couldn't speak. Daniel continued. Dad discovered Richard had been moving money from the company. When Dad confronted him, Richard threatened to expose something. What? I don't know. You keep saying that. Because I really don't know. I stood. Then what do you know? Daniel took a long breath. 4 years before Dad died, he changed his will. My heart skipped. I know. No, he said quietly. You don't know why. I waited. He didn't change it because he loved you more. I felt my chest tighten. He changed it because he knew someone was trying to get close to you. Who? Richard. I shook my head. That doesn't explain why you abandoned me. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Because Richard wasn't the only person watching you. I froze. Who else? He didn't answer. Daniel. Our mother. I stepped backward. No. She knew what Dad was doing. You're saying Mom was working with Richard? No. He shook his head. She was trying to protect Dad. Then why did she push me away? Because Dad ordered her to. I stared at him. Why? Daniel looked at me. Because someone had threatened to hurt you. The room suddenly felt silent. Who? Richard. I sat down. For 7 years, I had believed my mother had rejected me because she didn't want me. Now I was hearing that she had deliberately pushed me away because someone had threatened my life. But there was still something that didn't make sense. Then why didn't anyone tell me? Daniel's voice broke. Because Dad believed you'd come back if you knew. I looked at him. And you. I wanted to tell you. But you didn't. No. Why? He hesitated. Because the threat didn't end when Dad died. I stared at him. What threat? Daniel reached into his jacket. He pulled out his phone. Then he showed me a message. It was from an unknown number. Keep Claire away from the company. Another message followed. If she finds the account, she dies. My hands went cold. Who sent this? We never found out. When? 3 years ago. I looked at Daniel. Why didn't you call me? Because calling you would have told them where you were. I couldn't speak. Suddenly, the 7 years of silence looked different. The unanswered birthdays, the missing invitations, the family that seemed to forget I existed. Maybe they hadn't forgotten me. Maybe they had been watching me from a distance. Maybe they had been trying to keep me alive. But then I remembered the blue note. Ask your mother about Daniel. Something still wasn't right. I looked at my brother. If you're telling me the truth, why did Dad write that one person in the room was lying? Daniel's face went pale. I don't know. Then let's find out. I picked up my coat. Where are you going? To Mom's house. Daniel stood. You can't. Why? Because she isn't there. I stopped. What? She left. When? After she called you. I stared at him. How do you know? He didn't answer. Daniel. He looked away. I went there earlier. Why? To get something. What? He reached into his pocket. A small key appeared. My heart stopped. It looked exactly like the key Martin had given me. Where did you get that? Daniel stared at it. Dad gave it to me. I looked at him in disbelief. Then why did Martin give me one? Daniel slowly shook his head. I don't know. 2 keys. 2 people. 1 secret. And suddenly, I remembered something from my father's letter. There is a reason you were kept away. Maybe the blue file wasn't the real secret. Maybe it was only the beginning. Daniel looked at me. Claire, there's something I haven't told you. I waited. He swallowed. The account Dad wanted you to find. He paused. It's not in the company. Where is it? He looked directly into my eyes. It's in your name. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had never opened an account connected to my father. At least, not that I knew of. Daniel continued. And the money inside it. He stopped. I whispered. How much? He looked terrified. Enough to explain why everyone has been looking for you. Enough to explain why everyone has been looking for you. I stared at Daniel. What does that mean? He looked toward the windows. Your father created an account for you years ago. How many years? Almost 20. I laughed nervously. Daniel, I was 18-20 years ago. I know. Why would Dad create an account for me? Because he wanted you to have something that nobody could take from you. I shook my head. How much is in it? Daniel hesitated. About $12 million. I couldn't speak. 12 million. The number didn't feel real. I sat down. You're telling me my father secretly put $12 million in an account under my name? Yes. And nobody told me. Dad didn't want anyone to know. Not even me. Especially not you. I stared at him. That makes no sense. It does if you understand what Dad was afraid of. I remembered the letter. You have always believed that I was disappointed in you. You were wrong. For the first time, I wondered whether every painful memory I had carried for years had been based on a lie. Daniel continued, the account was connected to a trust. What kind of trust? A private family trust. And who controlled it? Dad. Who controls it now? Daniel looked at me. You. My heart pounded. Then why can't I access it? Because you don't know the password. I frowned. Do you? No. Then how do you know the money exists? Dad showed me the account once. Why? Because he wanted me to understand why I could never inherit the company. I stared at him. He told you about me? He told me everything. Then why did you treat me like I didn't matter? Daniel looked ashamed. Because Dad made me promise. A promise to hurt me? A promise to keep you away from the company. I shook my head. That isn't the same thing. No. His voice became quiet. It isn't. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I asked, where is the account? Daniel pulled out the second key. That's what this opens. I looked at it. The bank. He nodded. Dad's old bank. But Martin already took me there. Daniel shook his head. Not the same box. My stomach tightened. How many boxes did Dad have? 2. Why didn't Martin tell me? I don't know. I immediately called Martin. He answered after 2 rings. Claire. Did my father have another safety deposit box? Silence. Martin. Yes. My heart sank. Why didn't you tell me? Because your father instructed me not to. Why? Because the second box contains information that could put you in danger. I looked at Daniel. What kind of information? Martin lowered his voice. Evidence against someone who is still alive. Richard? No. My blood ran cold. Then who? Martin paused. Your mother. I couldn't breathe. Daniel closed his eyes. I whispered, what did she do? I can't explain over the phone. Then tell me where the box is. I'll meet you. He gave me an address. We left immediately. The bank was smaller than the first one. Martin was already waiting outside. He looked at Daniel, then at me. I should have told you sooner. I didn't answer. Inside, the manager brought out another box. This time, there was no name on the paperwork. Only a number. B17. Daniel inserted his key. The lock opened. Inside was a single folder. Nothing else. I opened it. The first document was a bank transfer. $2 million. The recipient wasn't Richard. It wasn't a company. It wasn't even a person. It was an account registered under a name I didn't recognize. I looked at Martin. Who is this? He pointed to the bottom of the page. There was a signature. My mother's. But beneath it was another name. Claire Bennett. My heart stopped. My signature? Martin shook his head. That's the problem. I stared at the document. Someone had forged my name. How long ago? 4 years. Before Dad died? No. After? Yes. I looked at Daniel. Who would forge my signature? He didn't answer. I turned another page. There was a photograph. My mother was standing outside a hotel. Beside her was Richard. I felt sick. But the next photograph was worse. It showed my mother handing an envelope to another man. A man I recognized. My father. The photograph had been taken 3 days before his death. I stared at it. Dad was alive. Martin nodded. And Mom met him. Daniel looked confused. That's impossible. I turned the photograph over. A date was written on the back. Then I saw the location. A hotel in Chicago. I remembered something. 3 days before Dad died, Mom had told everyone she was visiting her sister in Michigan. She had lied. I looked at her signature on the documents. Then at the photograph. Suddenly, everything seemed to point toward my mother. But something bothered me. If Mom had betrayed Dad, why had Dad trusted her enough to leave the evidence behind? Martin seemed to read my thoughts. There's one final document. He handed me a folded piece of paper. I opened it. It was my father's handwriting. Only one sentence appeared. Linda is not the person you should fear. I looked up. Then who? Martin didn't answer. Daniel's phone began ringing. He looked at the screen. His face went pale. It's Mom. He answered. Mom. We heard her crying through the speaker. Then she said, Daniel, listen carefully. Her voice shook. I know you found the second box. Daniel looked at me. Mom continued. Richard isn't the one who has been controlling everything. I felt a chill. Then who is? There was a long silence. Finally, Mom whispered, "Your father." The call ended. I stared at Daniel. My entire understanding of the story collapsed. My father had been dead for 4 years. Yet somehow, according to my mother, he was still the person behind everything. For several seconds, nobody spoke. I stared at the phone after the call ended. "Your father." Daniel slowly nodded. "But Dad is dead." "I know." "Then what did Mom mean?" Martin looked at the documents on the table. "We need to be careful. We don't know whether she meant your father was literally involved after his death." I looked at him. "Then what did she mean?" Before he could answer, the bank manager entered the room. "Mr. Hayes." Martin stood. "Yes. There is another envelope." He placed it on the table. My name was written across the front. I recognized the handwriting immediately. My father's. I opened it. Inside was a letter. "Claire, if you've reached this point, then you finally know enough to understand why I pushed you away. But there is one thing I need you to understand. I never abandoned you. I made everyone believe I did." My eyes filled with tears. I continued. "Richard was never the person I feared most. He was only the person I allowed everyone to blame. The real danger was inside our family." I looked at Daniel. He was staring at the floor. The next sentence made my heart stop. "Daniel knows more than he has told you." I looked up. "Daniel." He didn't move. "Dad said you know more." Daniel closed his eyes. "I was hoping you wouldn't find that letter." "Why?" "Because I wanted to protect you." I laughed bitterly. "I'm tired of hearing that." He looked at me. "Dad didn't trust Mom." "I know. He didn't trust Richard either." "Then who did he trust?" Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "You." I shook my head. "That doesn't explain anything." He finally told me the truth. Dad knew the company was being investigated. "By who?" "Federal investigators." I froze. "Why?" "Because someone had been laundering money through the company." I looked at Martin. He nodded. "Your father discovered it." Daniel continued. "He wanted to expose everyone involved." "Everyone?" "Yes." "Then why didn't he?" "Because he discovered your name was being used." I felt sick. "My name?" Daniel nodded. "Someone had created accounts and documents using your identity." I looked at the forged signature in front of me. Suddenly it made sense. The account, the transfers, the fake documents. Someone had been building a financial trail that could make me look guilty. "But why?" Daniel looked at Martin. Martin answered, "Because your father had placed the majority of his hidden assets in your name. So they wanted to frame me." "Yes." I stared at the documents. All those years, I had believed my family had abandoned me. But my absence had been part of the protection. If I had stayed close to the family business, I could have been blamed for crimes I didn't commit. I looked at Daniel. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because Dad made me promise." "Even after he died?" Daniel nodded. "He made me swear that I would keep you away until the danger was gone." "And was it?" "No." He looked toward the door. "It's never been gone." I felt tears running down my face. Then something suddenly occurred to me. "Wait." I looked at the letter again. Dad had written, "Daniel knows more than he has told you." I turned toward my brother. "What else?" He looked terrified. "There was a second meeting." "What meeting?" "The night Dad died." My heart stopped. "You said Dad went alone." "He did." "Then what are you talking about?" Daniel lowered his head. "I followed him." Silence filled the room. "You followed Dad?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid." "Of what?" "What I saw." I stepped closer. "What did you see?" Daniel's voice trembled. "Dad met Mom." My chest tightened. "And Richard?" "No." "Then who?" Daniel looked directly at me. "Your husband." I froze. "My ex-husband?" He nodded. "That night, Dad wasn't meeting Richard. He took a breath. He was meeting David. My mind went blank. David had been out of my life for 7 years. My marriage had ended because I believed he had cheated on me and secretly drained our savings. I had never understood why Dad had hated him so intensely. Daniel continued. Dad knew David was involved. Involved in what? The money. I shook my head. No. He was working with Richard. That doesn't make sense. It does. Daniel pulled out his phone. He showed me an old photograph. David was standing beside Richard. Behind them was the Bennett construction office. The date was from 6 months before my divorce. I stared at the photograph. Then I noticed something else. David wasn't looking at Richard. He was looking directly at the camera, as if he knew someone was taking the picture. Martin took the phone. This changes everything. What? He zoomed in. On the desk behind them was a folder. Blue. My heart stopped. The blue file, I whispered. Martin nodded. That photograph was taken before your father's death. I felt dizzy. The blue file hadn't been created after Dad died. It had existed years from me. David's words stayed in my head long after the call ended. I looked at Daniel. You knew about David? He nodded. Dad told me. Why didn't you tell me? Because he made me promise. I shook my head. Everyone keeps blaming Dad for the secrets. But you're an adult, Daniel. You could have told me. I know. His voice broke. I was afraid. For yourself. For you. Martin quietly placed the blue folder on the table. Claire, there's something you need to see. He opened it to the final page. It was a legal document. At the bottom was my father's signature. Above it was a statement. All assets placed under Claire Bennett's name were intentionally transferred to protect her from criminal liability and to preserve evidence. I read it twice. Then I saw another name. David Bennett. My ex-husband. My hands went cold. He used my name. Martin nodded. David had access to your personal information during your marriage. He used it to create accounts and move money. But why would he do that? To make you look responsible. I stared at the documents. 7 years ago, I thought David had betrayed me because he wanted money. The truth was worse. He wanted me to take the blame for his crimes. My father had discovered it, and instead of confronting David publicly, he built a secret plan to protect me. That was why he pushed me away. That was why my family disappeared. That was why the money had been hidden under my name. Suddenly, I understood the sentence in his letter. You have always believed that I was disappointed in you. You were wrong. My father hadn't rejected me. He had been protecting me. I started crying. Not because I had discovered I was wealthy. Not because millions of dollars were legally mine. I cried because I had spent 7 years hating the people who had secretly sacrificed everything to keep me safe. Then Martin said, There is one more thing. I looked up. What? Your father didn't die without leaving evidence. He removed the flash drive from the safe. We can open it now. Martin connected it to his laptop. A single video file appeared. The date was 4 days before my father's death. He clicked it. My father appeared on the screen. Older. Tired. But completely lucid. I covered my mouth. Claire, he said. My heart broke hearing his voice. If you're watching this, then I failed to protect you by keeping you away. He paused. I need you to know something. My father's eyes became wet. I never wanted you to think you weren't loved. I started crying. I pushed you away because I knew the people around us were becoming dangerous. I knew someone was using your identity. I knew your marriage wasn't what it appeared to be. He took a breath. David is working with Richard. Daniel looked at me. The video continued. Your mother knows part of the truth. Daniel knows another part. Neither of them knows everything. My father leaned closer to the camera. And that's intentional. Then came the words I would never forget. The person you should fear is not Richard. I held my breath. It is David. The video ended. Nobody spoke. Then Martin's phone rang. He answered. His expression changed. What's wrong? I asked. He looked at me. David has been arrested. I froze. When? 20 minutes ago. For what? Fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and conspiracy. I couldn't believe it. How? Martin looked at the flash drive. Your father left enough evidence. I sat back. For years, I had believed my life had fallen apart because I wasn't good enough. Because my marriage failed. Because my family didn't want me. Because I wasn't as successful as Daniel. But none of that had been true. I had been surrounded by people who were trying to use me, and my father had spent his final years quietly building a shield around me. Then my mother entered the room. I hadn't even realized she had arrived. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She looked at me. "I am sorry." I stood. She walked toward me. "I thought pushing you away would keep you safe. It destroyed me." "I know. You made me believe Dad didn't love me." She cried. "I know. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because your father made me promise." I looked at her. "And after he died?" She lowered her head. I was afraid. For the first time, I saw my mother not as the woman who rejected me, but as an exhausted woman who had spent years living with fear. I didn't forgive her immediately. Some wounds don't disappear because the truth finally comes out. But I hugged her, not because everything was fixed, because I finally understood. Daniel stood nearby. He smiled through his tears. "Dad would be proud of you." I looked at him. "For what?" "For surviving us." I laughed through my tears. That was the first real laugh I had shared with my family in years. Months later, the investigation was complete. David and Richard were prosecuted. The money connected to my identity was cleared. The assets my father had placed in the family trust legally became mine. But I didn't use the money to prove anything to my family. I didn't buy a mansion. I didn't buy an expensive car. I didn't suddenly become the person everyone wished I had been. Instead, I opened a small design